We're excited, we're on vacation, we have something fun to do. We wake up maybe sometimes even earlier to go on a fishing trip or a hunting trip or something that we like to do, or shopping or on vacation, and we actually feel better. There's not a problem getting up, and we kind of talk ourselves into it. So one of the ways to do that, if we look in the mirror and say something positive, or write it on the mirror if we need to remind ourselves, the positive affirmation is going to make a huge difference in how our body's working. The mind is a powerful thing. The thing about mental health training is it's kind of like physical training. Just like we need to lift weights to train our muscles, to get bigger muscles, the same thing happens with positive body thoughts, with positive thinking. We almost have to train ourselves to do it, because we get in that routine of, I always hurt. We start to get negative thoughts rolling through our body. We know that when we have a negative thought, it creates that same stress response. Whereas when we have a positive thought, it's going to release different hormones in our body. So it's tough, but we have to train our body. It's the same thing, practice. So like I said, we might have to start off by writing it down and forcing ourselves into thinking something positive, or force ourselves into laughing, but it will make a definite difference. Sleep is another thing. That if we can start to add that into our body, we're going to do better. People that have chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, need more sleep, but it's kind of a 20/20 thing, because you can't fall asleep because you can't get comfortable. You can't do it. So there's some steps that I wrote down on the handout to give you some ideas of how we improve our sleep. It's probably things that you've heard before, like don't exercise 3 hours before you go to bed, don't eat before you go to bed, use your bed for sleeping, not for doing different activities. Don't watch TV in bed. If you're under stress and you're trying to remember things, have a little sheet of paper that you can write down some of the things that you keep thinking about that's preventing you from falling asleep. Write those things down. Okay, so here's the physiology of fibromyalgia. This means, how does it work? It basically comes down to 3 things: inflammation, or too much of it; systemic toxicity, too much toxins; and nerve system dysfunction. Those are the 3 big ones. If we can handle all 3 of these, then we're going to make a major step towards moving in the right direction of fibromyalgia. So, causes of inflammation. I wrote these down. There should be a long list on the front page, I believe. Injury. Obviously, everybody knows you hurt your arm or your leg, you're going to get inflammation. Why do we have inflammation? It's a healing mechanism. If we don't get inflammation released, our body doesn't heal right. Those chemicals that your body releases when you twist your ankle are designed to help improve the healing process. Sugar is very inflammatory, so we'll kind of walk down this list. Injuries release chemicals that cause pain. It's a safety mechanism to prevent further injury, helps the body start the healing process. But sometimes the body doesn't heal because of immobilization or scar tissue formation, nerve dysfunction, lack of movement. So this lack of movement thing, it doesn't have to be a short-term injury. It can be a chronic injury from like poor posture. We do know for sure that people that don't move as much have more pain. Sitting, they say, is almost as bad for our body as sugar is for our teeth. So in order to have our body feel and work better, we need to move. One of the ideas is, this came from a book called The Blue Zones, for people that live the longest. If you can just move naturally, so park a little further away than you normally do, take the stairs when you normally would take the elevator, little things like walking the dog, walking around the house, doing your own yard work. Now, it sounds like it shouldn't be that hard, but when you have fibromyalgia and you have constant pain, these things are the hard things. The little things add up, and when everything you do hurts, it's harder to do these things. So it does make a difference taking a little bit extra out, doing a little bit more exercise. We'll learn a little bit about why exercise matters. I'm going to talk about that now, because it seems like we keep covering the same thing. When we look at the other side of the equation on that same page, it talks about stress. I'll pull up this sheet again here. In the body, at the top part of the spinal column, right here, right above your skull, there's a little part of the brain called the cerebellum. You're going to see that in a circle on the handout. And the job of the cerebellum is to basically regulate and balance out the hormones and the chemicals in your body. We have always known that if you have a problem with your cerebellum, you're not going to have coordinated movement. So sometimes we'll see people that have like a jerky movement as they're moving, or someone that's had a stroke, they have trouble with coordination of muscle movement. A lot of times that's a problem with the cerebellum. But now we're starting to understand that cerebellum does more than just movement. It's actually balancing out the chemicals and hormones in our body, so it's what's designed to keep us healthy. The thing is, there's information that tells the cerebellum how to work, and the information that tells that how to work is coming from the joints of your body. So between each joint in your body, there's a little receptor called a mechanoreceptor or a proprioceptor. Basically, it's a movement receptor. So as we're moving our body through a full range of motion, not a limited range of motion, but a full range of motion, we're firing these receptors. Those receptors travel down the nerves and then go up the spine right to the cerebellum, and that tells us how to regulate the body. So the more we move, the better the cerebellum works to balance out the chemicals in the body. The less we move, the less that happens. And so if we think about like a river, the middle part of the river that's constantly moving, that's the healthiest part of the river. The back parts of the river where it's not moving, where the water gets stagnant, that's where all the chemicals and pollution gets. That's where we find all the green water and the scum. So the movement is really key for life, and you can really think of a lot of different examples of that. Other things that are going to trigger that cerebellum to tell our body how to balance out those hormone levels: positive thoughts, we just talked about that, prayer and meditation, chiropractic, we'll talk about that later, and then proper diet. We're going to talk about more than just omega-3, but that's one of the key ingredients for having the nerves work right. So aerobic exercise is going to move the joints. Again, this sounds like it should be easy to get out and get moving, but when we have fibromyalgia, sometimes it's not easy to start exercising. So we might have to do some of these other steps first before we can even get our body ready to do exercise. Because if we exercise and we just hurt worse, it's going to be tough to go out and exercise again. But remember, exercise is going to equal energy. So a lot of times we wake up in the morning and say, I'm too tired to exercise, when if we just got up, a half hour of exercise, we're going to have a lot more energy than half an hour of sleep. So I'm going to show you this one stretch specifically for fibromyalgia, because this is called the YWT Stretch. This is really going to offset a lot of the positions that we find ourselves in with fibromyalgia. Sitting, working on a computer, we're kind of head down, arms forward. You think about our everyday life in the United States right now, we're really in this position way more than we need to be. So the problem with our head down and arms forward is it cuts off oxygen supply to our body. If we don't have enough oxygen, the muscles don't work right, we're going to hurt worse. And we have to use extra muscles just to help us breathe. So everybody just try this for a second. Roll your shoulders forward, tip your head down, and try to take